It's May 1st, and that means rent is due for businesses right across the country. But with revenues slashed so severely during the COVID-19 crisis, many businesses are very much struggling to make those payments. The government did announce, the federal government, an emergency commercial rent assistance program this month, or last month they announced it, but for this month, loans will be given to landlords if a business has seen a drop of 70% in revenue. Now, that loan, or part of it, is forgivable if a landlord agrees to cut the business's rent by at least 75%. The program, though, is not expected to be in place until at least mid-May. So is that too late? Are landlords even willing to play ball? We've reached one of each, a business owner and a landlord. Ginger Robertson is the owner of the Edmund Burke Pub, as well as Off the Hook Fish Restaurant. Hi, Ginger. And Samantha Sherer is a commercial landlord, and they both join us from Toronto. Hi there. Great to see you both. Thank you very much for making time.
Hi there.
Hi, thank you.
Ginger, I want to start with you. You own 2 restaurants in Toronto. Before we get into what the potential solution might be or what might help, can you lay out for us how the pandemic has affected business for you?
Sure. The Edmund Burke has been open for about almost 4 years, actually. May 9th would have been our 4th anniversary, and it's completely closed since the middle of March when it was mandated. So Off the Hook, we just purchased that restaurant on March 9th. We closed, and then a week later, this all happened. That restaurant, Off the Hook, is open for takeout and delivery, but the Edmund Burke is closed. It was never set up as a takeout restaurant. We're working on something, but we were waiting to get more information about some of the measures before we took that risk to, possibly lose more money instead of, save the restaurant.
Gotcha. And just a quick follow-up, is rent an issue for you, or might it potentially be in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's draining our savings. So it's an issue now for us. We're able to pay the rent. My landlord hasn't, mentioned the E word at all, but it's, like I said, our savings are dwindling.
Samantha, what about you? Tell me a bit about how COVID-19 has affected things for your properties and the businesses that rent from you.
Sure. I have a small mixed residential property that I own with 2 partners, and there are 2 commercial spaces in there, and both of them have been ordered to close. So both of them have absolutely no revenue whatsoever. And haven't since they were ordered to close.
And so what has that meant for your ability to collect rent from them?
Well, we haven't collected any rent, and it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to. And we understand that they're in a bind, and we're all in a bind. And so I have no intention of evicting them or anything. I don't see how that would be helpful to anybody. But I am also aware that we can't float them forever.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, let me just follow up and ask you and just explain for our viewers the program that the government announced last week, which is basically the landlords agreed to take less rent, and the portion of rent that's left over, so that the tenant pays a quarter of what they normally pay, and then what's left over is divided in half, and you get and you have to pay for half of it, and then the government will loan you the other half. And if you agree to the rent cut, it's not really a loan; they'll subsidize that other half. But it still means that you're taking a cut. And there's also, from the landlords I've been speaking to, a ton of questions about who will qualify, what the conditions are. What do you know so far, and do you anticipate this is a program you will access?
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll have to access it, and I think it makes sense. I think we all need to take a bit of a hit on this. I mean, this came out of nowhere for most of us, and we have a little bit of a contingency fund that we can draw on, and so we can, even without revenue, we can support our tenants for a little while, but we can't do it endlessly, as I said. Yeah.
And Ginger, what about you? Have there been any conversations with your landlord about this program?
He's taking a wait-and-see approach. So he thinks that the plan is extremely flawed. I can't say I disagree with him. You're not obligated to participate as a landlord. This landlord here is a saint, but unfortunately, most landlords, friends of mine who own businesses on the Danforth alone, are in a situation where it's pay or get out, and they have no intention of accessing that loan, like whatsoever. Most landlords are not going to eat 25%. And on the flip side, what about the businesses that have been closed for the last 45 days? Where are they supposed to come up with that 25%? So I think you're asking one small business to support another small business. Yeah, and I don't see that as a solution, and most landlords won't either. So, and I think it's worth mentioning that, saying that someone won't be evicted during a pandemic, well, why would a landlord do that? They've done it for decades. They've done it before the pandemic. It's happening now during the pandemic. People have been evicted for non-payment of rent, and it'll continue to happen after. What motivates them, I don't know. They've owned the buildings for generations. They can float through a pandemic, no problem, and wait for somebody with deeper pockets after. So either way, that's not the issue. The issue is that this doesn't help most of us.
And so what would, and I'm asking because there's two levels of government in play here, right? Most of the time rent is, Ginger, a provincial issue, but the federal government stepped in because there was, some moratoriums on residential evictions, but you didn't really see that at the commercial level. What might, if the government is listening right now, both the federal and the provincial, Ginger, what might help you?
We need more of a bailout, just the same way that, auto sector, oil, banks have received massive bailouts throughout, the decades and not had to pay them back. You're asking small family-owned businesses to remortgage their homes, lose their homes, start behind the eight ball, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt when and if we're ever able to open again. That's a big ask. We didn't put ourselves in this situation. My landlord didn't put me in this situation. I don't blame him at all. He is a small business, just like me. They have to come up with more money. It has to happen. Or most of us will go bankrupt and the streets will be empty.
Samantha, same question to you. The government's listening right now. What might, do you think, make a tangible difference?
As I said, I think we're in a lucky position that we have a little bit of a contingency fund. And so in the short term, I think it could be okay. But neither of my tenants has any revenue coming in, and they won't be able to have revenue for a long time. They both are in personal one-to-one activities where they're not going to be able to open. And so I would hope that there would be funding for them, a separate kind of package for them that they can access that isn't an interest-free loan, because racking up debt makes no sense at this point. And letting go your tenants makes no sense. I don't see the wisdom in that. There's going to be a lot of vacancy after this. Who's going to rent your place? And especially if you get branded as one of those kind of landlords, I think, we don't have to support that kind of behavior.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I really appreciate both of you making time to talk to us and share your views. I know it's a tough time, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.